Welcome to Solar Works for Illinois. I'm Tim Montague, your host. Today we are breaking down solar project finance with Harry Benson of Standard Solar. This is Solar Works for Illinois. Before we welcome Harry to the webinar, I want to make a couple of quick announcements. In January 2020, January 28th, we have John Carson with Trajectory Energy coming on to discuss his work with low income community solar here in Illinois. And then in February, we have Ryan Marborough with C2 Capital, and we'll be discussing corporates going solar in the Midwest and beyond. That event is February 25th. You can find all of our events at secco.com, that's CECCO.com/solar webinar. There's the slide. So sign up for those at secco.com/solar webinar. Today, I'm so thrilled to have Harry Benson, who is the Midwest Director of Business Development for Standard Solar. He is a veteran of both solar and wind with 12 years of utility and distributed generation experience. And he is responsible for deploying the company's low-cost capital and partnering with C&I and community solar developers in the Midwest. And if you ever get to meet Harry in person, you'll have to ask him about his Greenpeace experience. He is a passionate and lifelong environmentalist. Welcome to the webinar, Harry.
Hey, thanks, Tim. I really appreciate you inviting us here. I just wanted to thank you for putting this show on. It's great. It's exactly what Illinois and the Midwest needs for us to. We all need to be working together to push this thing forward.
It's my pleasure, Harry. And it's been great getting to know you a little bit over the last couple of years. And we have hopefully a nice 5 to 10 year run here before we hit a little bit of a downturn. Welcome to the solar coaster of the Midwest. You're a very brave man, but tell us about yourself and your team.
Okay, well, first off, Standard Solar has been around for a while, which is an anomaly in the solar business. We've been around since 2004. We've started off like many solar developers in the residential and then sold that business. And as we grew into larger projects, mostly in the mid-Atlantic region initially. So as we grew and we became an EPC, we got noticed. And then in 2017, we were purchased by a company called Energeer. It's a global energy company. Energeer is $7 billion in total, $5+ billion in the United States in sales, and is a global energy company. So that's where we get our low-cost capital. In the United States, for example, they own Green Mountain Power, a utility. So it's utility-grade capital, which is very important. It's why we're as competitive as we are. Their mission for us in 2017 is to grow by either developing projects in the Mid-Atlantic or to purchasing projects throughout the rest of the country. In the Midwest, we partner with people. We don't do anything direct. We work with all kinds of different folks. We've been, over the last year or so, growing. Previously, Standard Solar had a different sales guy that was in the area, and he grew the business, and now we're taking the baton and carrying it forward to grow and purchase projects. We're based out of Rockville, Maryland, but we also have an office in Chicago. We've got people in Minneapolis to manage the 40-some projects we have in Minnesota. We have a huge engineering department. We're an engineering company run by engineers and a guy named Scott Wider, the president, who's been with us at the helm for over 10 years. He's the reason we're successful as we are. He's involved in every deal that comes through this house here. So we have 12 design engineers. So we're able to bring value engineering to every deal that we work on. We have a full EPC team. We do our own estimation, and we have a full EPC team. We have a financing department, and we have an O&M division called Vigilant Energy Management that manages some 100 megawatts of projects across the country right now. We have a full construction group that's got 12 project managers that are building projects in 14 states right now. So we're a good sized group. I think there's 75 of us or so, based out of Rockville and then others scattered across the country. We have a sales group of 8 of us, and in the Midwest, while I do Illinois and Minnesota, we also have Tessa Setzer, who is with us, and she works in a number of other states. She in Missouri, in Iowa, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio. What am I forgetting?
Wisconsin.
How can you forget Wisconsin?
The middle of the country.
Yeah, and then also we have doing policy for us and inside sales, Lucas Brown, who's also from Wisconsin. Yeah, got the Midwest crew here, and I went to UW-Madison. So I think that's a summary of us and who we are. And what else can I tell you?
That's great, Harry. Thank you. And, just to set the table a little bit for our participants, if anybody is not aware of what's going on in the Illinois market, we got a bill called FEJA, the Future Energy Jobs Act, back in 2017. It came into force. And what that's doing is funding 2,800 megawatts of both distributed generation and utility scale solar and wind, mostly solar. And so we now have a very vibrant and growing solar market. 111 community solar projects are going to go in the ground next year. Some of those might just barely get going this year, but for the most part, all of that's happening in 2020 and 2021. And then there's several hundred megawatts of utility scale solar as well. And then a very vibrant, both small, medium, and large rooftop or DG market with 666 megawatts all set of DG solar. So that's the first tranche that was kicked off. We have very generous RECs, which brought the developers in droves. And, the community solar market was way oversubscribed. So we have 111 projects that won RECs, but there's another 700 in the wings waiting to get developed. So as soon as we get the second phase of this program going, there's going to be a lot more solar going in the ground. So Harry, tell us about what it is that you're doing in the Midwest.
Okay, thanks. Well, I think that we've been in, as I mentioned, in Illinois for just a little over a year, and we've got about 20 megawatts worth of projects that we will be breaking ground in next year. So I think that those we just recently had a success with a partner in Lake County. WCP won an RFP for Lake County facilities, some 35 facilities there, and we're working side by side with them. We were there supporting them through the process. So we're looking forward to expanding upon that. We have some community solar projects that we're taking forward, some under LOI, some that we're still talking to the vendors, and we expect those to come to fruition next year. And then I believe that we're getting our story out, because we'd like to partner with many of the people that are on the call right now, and we'd like to talk to them and understand better about their projects, because we really have the ability to customize a financing program for whatever type of project you have. Like, for example, if it's just and many, one of the things I've noticed as I traveled through the Midwest is there've been so many stalwarts that have been out there doing solar for a long time, and they've been, robbing Peter to pay Paul to get these projects built. They get them built, and it really is amazing. We were just at the Missouri conference, and so many of the projects and the growth that's going on down there has to do really with offsetting load and behind the meter type of projects and so forth. But I think that there is a whole new era that's coming, another wave that comes with the incentives, and we've seen it in Minnesota with the growth that's taken place there. We're seeing it now in Illinois. We need another piece of legislation to get passed in Illinois to take it to the next level, which we'll be there helping lobby to take it forward. I've been hearing some good things. I've been hearing some other things that people have, some people concerned, but we think that it's going to happen, and we're there in full force. We've got an office on East Monroe. We're going to continue to be there to push the story forward. But I mean, an example of say, like, for example, a small 500 kW rooftop in Illinois today, we would be there to support a project like that. We're there to support a full portfolio of projects that are going forward. We have a special customized program for that. We've got co-development agreements that we're able to use, where we side by side with developers work, and we fund the interconnection. We fund other types of early stage costs associated with their projects, and then move them forward. It's all done with the intent of, at the end of the day, purchasing the projects from them and owning and operating them long term. So I think, you know, there's a bunch of different types of projects that are out there, and different types of companies, and I've kind of classified them as, like, as an example, mom and pops or larger, that have come out of the retail business, and they're doing larger rooftop projects now. And so that's one type of customer that's out there. And then there's others that are what I call community solar factories. They basically have their GIS and their land people out in front of them, securing land, doing their critical issues analysis on the sites, making sure that they're good sites, and then submitting them for interconnection, advancing them down the interconnection path, and then moving them into local government permitting, getting the SRECs or the adjustable block program associated with them in Illinois, or if it's in another state, in their states. And then once they've taken them to that level, that's like the early stage spend that's out there. And so we've got a financing program that's designed for those types of folks. And then everybody in between. You know, there have been a number of folks that have really grown in the Midwest, that have you know, regular portfolios of projects that they're taking forward. We're able to quote financing price for them to purchase those projects, and then at the same time take over the projects earlier and fund the construction for them. So, like, we've got a bunch of different tools that we use for financing, and one of them, and probably the most important, is our president, Scott Wider, and keeping a creative and open mind to working with partners to get their projects built and over the finish line, and provide funding capital early in the process. So I think that being creative in this business, I mean, don't get me wrong, we need to earn our return and we need to appease tax equity, but I think that outside of those, we are open to people's ideas. I think another thing is that we do is we can, because we're owned by Energeer, we take a project to the finance committee, and once finance committee has basically approved it, we have carte blanche to then start spending on the project. So for example, we can balance sheet pre-construction and construction financing, and we can balance sheet procurement of equipment for a project.
So Harry, it would be helpful, I think, if we talked about a couple different scenarios. If I'm a developer of a portfolio of rooftop projects, say, and at what stage of development does Standard Solar engage with a developer?
It really is up to the developer. We can step in early, we can step in at NTP, or we can purchase the project after they're built. So it really depends on the needs of the individual developer. But let's say, for example, and this might help if I add a slide here. So this is a typical this is a typical deal that we would do with someone who had a number of rooftop type projects. First, we'd enter into a letter of intent, which would give us 30 to 45 days to perform due diligence on the sites. And then at that time also, all key assumptions would be developed, what the revenues would be, what the PPA price would be, what the cost, the EPC price would be. And then that would all get populated into the purchase agreement, whether it's a MIPSA or whether it's a asset purchase agreement. So, and in the MIPSA asset purchase agreement, it would have key development milestones. So if the rooftop company wanted to redeploy the money that they'd invested in those projects and had the projects at NTP, we would take over the ownership of the projects at NTP, and we would reimburse them for their interconnection and other development costs that they put into it. We would have a series of milestone payments, which would once the ownership transfers, that would be the largest payment of their development fee for their projects. And we would also, actually, this goes back to the letter of intent period, we would give them the all-in purchase price for their project. So they would know exactly before entering into the asset purchase agreement or the MIPSA agreement, they would know exactly what we were paying for the project. We would know what the EPC would be, and they would know what their development fee would be. And then, as I said, depending on how they wanted to work it, we would either construct it. If they wanted to construct it, we would take ownership of the project and hire them to construct it if they met our specs and if they met our construction team's needs, and they were willing to sign our construction agreement. So I think that, and then they could construct the project. We've done that in a number of situations in the Midwest, or we're about to do it as well. So I think that's the agreement. And then in the EPC contract, we would either we would perform the E and the P. We would do the engineering for it. We would do the procurement for it. And then we would hire them to do the C. They would be a subcontractor. Or if they didn't want to do it, we would hire one of the many good construction companies that are out there, much like Continental. We would, we would hire someone to construct the project for them and then take ownership long-term and own and operate it afterwards. So that's one of the formats that we do. Uh-oh.
Sorry. And
Okay.
when you're working with an EPC, or you're considering working with an EPC, what is it that you're looking for? Because everybody needs money, right? Everybody has to finance their projects one way or another, whether that's construction financing or long-term ownership and operation. What is your playbook? What are you looking for?
You're talking about for hiring a construction contractor?
Well, and maybe we should talk a little bit about this. There's flavors of EPCs. We call ourselves an EPC here at Continental, right? We are fully capable of engineering, procuring, and constructing distributed generation facilities, but we do not self-develop, projects that we want to own and operate, right? We are never a long-term owner and operator. We just want to build stuff. And we will develop one-off C&I projects, but otherwise we're very busy now building portfolios of projects for other developers like yourselves. But so I get it that if I have a project that is looking for a PPA, for example, then you would engage with us and help to develop that project and get it across the finish line, right?
Yes, and offer you a PPA to use, from our low cost of capital.
You're offering the host a PPA.
Yes.
But let's say you're an EPC that is bigger and brawnier and wanting to say build a portfolio of big box stores, which of course is happening in many places, including Illinois now. how do you engage in that? And are you self-developing those portfolios as well, or are you simply sidling up to the other EPCs or the other developers and EPCs and helping them get across the finish line?
In Illinois and in the Midwest, we will work with subcontractors. We will be the general contractor, and we'll hire construction groups to do the work for us. And so, and what do we look for in that? I mean, we look for, you know, folks with experience. We look for, it's really more about meeting our team and then meeting the EPCs team and just sitting down and talking it through. And we've got a set of specs that we need our projects built towards. And you know, that's essentially what it is. It's, I mean, you know, we're not in the Mid-Atlantic. We've got teams that are out constructing projects. We've got, as I mentioned, a lot of project managers that are overseeing projects all over the place. And in the Mid-Atlantic, we build them ourselves, but elsewhere, we'll hire contractors.
I've noticed that, you know, block 4 of the adjustable block program has not filled yet. And what that means is that projects have been falling out that were submitted. You know, there's still RECs available, and that number shrinks and grows, and it's been doing this kind of accordion thing right now. And so my analysis of that is that there were projects that were sloppily developed and couldn't get across the finish line for whatever reason. And that's a good thing, because now there's still block 4 RECs, which are a higher value REC and an opportunity. And, you know, guys like us are, you know, very actively pursuing individual C&I projects, which, you know, of course, the host or the owner of a facility wants to know that they're going to get RECs. We don't know when block 5 is going to launch, right? So if you don't get into block 4, then there could be a waiting period of a couple of years to get block 5 RECs. But what can developers and EPCs do to improve the odds of, you know, working with the Standard Solar, getting construction financing, and getting their projects acquired?
Yeah, good question. You know, I think we work with many different types of partners. So mom and pops, we've got, you know, middle stage groups. We'll work with very sophisticated developers. And so I think that one of the things that we have that a lot of other financing institutions don't have, and that's experience and a lot of really good value-added engineering that we can do. So we're working with some very early stage developers that you know, relatively inexperienced, and we will take them in and we will assign engineers to them to walk through, to pour over their work, or in some cases do the design work ourselves for the project, and use the relationships that they've built to get projects going. You know, we've got, I think that's what makes us a little different than a lot of other folks. We're willing to step in and add value-added engineering to what's going on, because there's not a huge barrier to entry into the solar market. I mean, the experience that I had in the wind business was that, I mean, to put up a wind turbine, it's a pretty sophisticated activity. I mean, a solar project is also very sophisticated, but not to the same level. And so I think that a lot of folks are in the residential, and then they make their move into the larger projects. And I think that they need support to do that. And it's got to be done right, because these projects have to last 25 years.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the whole quality issue. That's another phenomenon that we sometimes see, that developers want to use the low-cost solution, whether that's the construction or the equipment or both. And while that does improve the profit on the front end, it's not going to serve the long-term owner of the project. And so I don't know if you have any more experience you want to share about that. We're certainly of the mind that we want solar to have a great sterling reputation here in the Midwest. We want projects that produce and deliver on their REC contracts, and of course offset their host's energy load. A solar array only does that if it's working. and all of the parts and pieces. So we're very sensitive to high quality work.
Yeah, there was at the solar and storage Midwest conference that just took place. There was a gentleman asked the question. He said, "Well, these programs are so front loaded with the adjustable block program and the smart inverter rebate, and so what happens after you receive all that money? How do you ensure that the projects will continue to be successful their duration of the 15 years that they're there?" And I turned to the person standing next to me and I said, "You got to build them right. Make sure that they're gonna run. And you're not gonna have all kinds. They're not gonna be falling apart, because the margins do get thinner later in the project life." But I think, standard wants to be the standard in solar. That's where the name comes from. But at the same time, I don't want to have people on the call now think that they can't get their best price from us also for the purchasing of the project. With us, you get the best of both worlds. We're going to make sure that it's built right, but at the same time, because of our low cost of capital and because we are looking to own and operate these long term, that we will give them one of the best prices in the market out there for the value of their project. Well, then, and so whatever that the EPC is to build that, minus the value of the project, is their developer fee. That's the money that they'll make on the projects. And all the Illinois projects that we've looked at so far are very juicy, and they've got, people are going to be making a lot of money off these projects. And we just need to take it to the next level and get the next legislative bill and full funding for all the projects going forward. And I believe we're off to the races. Good things are happening in Illinois.
What Harry's referring to is the Path to 100. We have these $200 million in fees that all the ratepayers in Illinois are paying, and that's going into central funds and then being paid out to project owners in the form of RECs, renewable energy credits. But it turns out that $200 million is not quite enough to get us to 25% renewable portfolio standard by 2025. It gets us to 17%. So we need additional funds to truly achieve the 25%. And of course, like many other places in the country, we want a higher RPS now. We want a 40% or 100% RPS. And the Path to 100 is the key, though, to avoiding a funding cliff. If we don't get additional funding in the next 12 months, then the REC funds are going to dry up for a period of time. We don't know how long exactly. So that's not going to be good for anybody who's developing projects in Illinois. So if you are developing projects, if you're a stakeholder in renewable energy in the Midwest, pay attention to Path to 100 and get engaged with the Illinois Solar Energy Association and SEIA to assist that effort. It's a vital effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, but it's not, I mean, this is the solar story, right? Every state that's been in solar for a long period of time has its stops and starts. And so we're off to a great start. Let's build these projects out now. We've got the 20 megawatts of projects that we're interested in advancing forward. And that's what we're focused on, but it'll be great when we get the next round as well. And we are here to and have a large supply of capital that we want to deploy for Illinois and for the rest of the Midwest. So no shortage on our side of interest to advance projects.
We're going to take questions from the live audience, so please type those into the Q&A or the chat. There's multiple ways to get your question to us. And while you're doing that, Harry, maybe you and your team can give us a little broader picture here. We know that Illinois is a hot market. We look to Minnesota as an aspirational peer. Minnesota's been there, done that for 5 years. They have 1,200 plus megawatts now, and then we'll soon be nipping at their heels. But there's a burgeoning market in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Indiana. What is Standard Solar's take on what's going on in the broader Midwest?
Well, I think that the way that we work and the way that we're going to work going forward is we're going to be there. We're going to be in these markets. We're going to be coming and meeting with the individual developers that are throughout the market, and understanding what their needs are and designing a program for them. I think that, you know, in general, we just came back from the Solar Storage Midwest conference, and we heard a fair bit, and we've been out talking to developers all around. And I think, you know, you need a number of things to make the state programs go forward. You need the interest, you need an RPS, you need some kind of high pricing or some kind of incentive via an SREC to move the project forward. And you need organized rules around net metering and organized rules around community solar. If they don't have community solar, then they need to advance that as well. I mean, all those things are important. And I mean, we've seen some new moves in Indiana recently that we like, and we're going to be deploying in Indiana. Tessa is new on board, and she's going to be traveling through there and meeting with all the different folks to make sure that whenever they have a project and they want us to take a look at it, they just fill out one of our intake forms and they send it in. It then goes through, depending on what they want us to do, whether they want us to put together a PV1 for them and a PV sys to understand it a little bit more in a more sophisticated fashion. If they're expecting us to EPC, then that's what we'll do, and then we'll also run it through our EPC team and through financing, and we can come back to them with what we think the value of the project is, what we think if they are asking for a PPA from us, what the PPA would be like, and you know, that's the process that we'd be going through. So same thing with Lucas. Lucas is here to handle contacts from all the different states to put and run numbers for any of the partners that are out there. But I mean, going back to answer your question, you know, where do we think the good spots are going to be? I mean, everything that you've just mentioned. I mean, Michigan's a little bit more complicated, I think. We don't, you know, with the cap of the 150 kW so far, you know, that needs to go up. We're working in the state of Maine right now, where they had a similar type of cap on the projects, and they just lifted that cap, and then it's just Katie bar the door. It's all kinds of good things happening there now. So that's need a little of that taking place in Michigan. We need to you know, that seems to be a little more focused on utility scale stuff there. The PERPA contracts seem to also be stalled in the DTE territory, and the consumer seems to be because of what the Public Service Commission just recently did, is going to be pushing them to advance that process in consumers. I think that you know, Iowa, we've got a couple of projects that we're working on and looking at in Iowa, seems to have some higher energy pricing in some of the areas, and so that the projects seem to pencil in that area. In Ohio, we're evaluating. I don't know if Tessa, if you have any other comments that you wanted to add to it.
You are covering it quite well. Yeah, I was just this morning before I joined this one on a call with Missouri, and exactly what Harry said. It needs to be like an SREC program, incentives to push forward to make solar viable in a market.
Yeah,
and it's interest.
I think that we're right where we need to be. I think that with low interest rates, with solar costs being lower, I think with you know, the tariffs and ITC solutions being proposed out there, but either way, with or without the tariffs or the ITC, I think that we're at a great new era for DG solar. I think that the value of solar is being talked about at the public service commissions now, and I think that they get it. You know, okay, yeah, utility is this level and DG is slightly higher, but it has other values to it, and it'll keep large transmission projects from having to take place, and substation rebuilds from having to take place, and so forth. And you know, and we're paying our upgrades as we go. So I think that there's a lot of very positive movement afoot in the DG side of things in the Midwest.
And if I could interject, that's one of the reasons Illinois is such a great market. We have a 2 megawatt AC limit for behind the meter solar. So these are fairly large projects. A 2 megawatt rooftop could be a 10-acre rooftop. So if you have a large manufacturing facility, a large warehouse, a large facility behind the meter could save a company $250,000 on their cost of energy per year, and upwards of $5 million over 25 years. So this is real savings that can be used for other significant capital expenses, whether that's R&D, hiring, expanding, etc. Energy, even though energy is cheap in the Midwest, solar will save you money, and that's what we have going on right now. It's a shame that there are some markets like Michigan, it sounds like, where DG has a quite restrictive cap of 150 kW. And in that case, what we see, I think, is megawatt plus scale, small utility or utility scale, right? Although I did see an RFP recently for a university that's doing like a 20 megawatt project. I don't know if you guys noticed that RFP. How does that work for behind the meter 20 megawatts in Michigan? Do you know anything about that, Harry or Tessa?
I have not heard this.
I don't, and I mean, I could get an answer back to you, but
Yeah.
on that, I think it's probably going to a contract for differences, and they just have to design it for under the load, and if power goes back out onto the market, it's sold for wholesale. So I think that, but I'd have to research it more.
So we have a comment from Aaron. We've seen some really low PPA pricing offered in public RFP responses in Illinois in the 1 to 2 cent per kWh. Is that competitive of a rate consistent with what you're seeing in the market, or can you otherwise comment on this? I have some thoughts about that, but yes, the PPAs in these public RFPs can be extraordinarily low. Tell us what your thoughts are about low PPAs.
Is this where I'm supposed to knock over the glass of water and get up and walk out of the room?
Yeah, it's kind of brutal on everybody. When
No, I meant that, talking pricing in an organization. But no, I think, yeah, there's some the adjustable block program grants and the smart inverter. It's juicy, and especially if you've got low and moderate income folks as subscribers, then the SRECs are in the 70s. So it does drive down the price, but that isn't to some degree the point, that they want to bring low cost electricity to low and moderate income folks. We're in we've seen 2s and 3s and 4 cent PPAs, which is great. I mean, that's again the value of solar to the consumers of the project for hosting a project on their property or by subscribing to one of the many programs that are out there.
One of the tactics I've become aware of also is developers are trying to get a toehold in the market, and so they will bid super low, understanding that they may not make a lot of money on that project, but it then gets them traction in the market. So I think that we will see some very aggressive numbers early, like we are right now. We're early in the process, but that will tick up as the market matures. And obviously the incentives are going to go down over time. And so PPA prices will have to accordingly float upwards as the market matures. I've been paying a lot of attention to the California market. That's the most mature market in our country for all intents and purposes. Hawaii is also a very mature market, but it's a very small market. And in California, they have a 10-year payback basically for DG, for rooftop solar. In Illinois, we have a 3 to 6 year payback for C&I solar, and a little longer for residential, maybe 6 to 8 years. But this is as good a solar market as any market in the country. So take note, developers, dive in and take on, the Midwest, because obviously there's also opportunities here in the area. I also wanted to just quickly reference Indiana NIPSCO, which is a utility in northern Indiana, it serves about 500,000 people, has just run an RFP for, I think, 2,300 megawatts of solar and a little bit of wind, or solar and
Right.
storage and wind. That is a very large RFP, but they are very serious about shuttering their coal plants in northern Indiana. These are plants that are polluting our air and water, and are going to be replaced with clean, green solar and wind and storage energy. So the energy transition is happening before our eyes. This is a company, NIPSCO is not out to save the world. They are out to return, a profit to their investors, and that is their first and foremost goal. So it is truly a new day in the Midwest. And now we're getting a few more questions here, so let's get to those. Anonymous says, what top 3 qualities or mindsets does Harry notice in his best project managers? I guess maybe the questioner needs to define project manager, but how do you read that, Harry?
That sounds like somebody here at Standard Solar. No, I'm just kidding. Our project managers for construction, I think that we have a real robust culture here. And so when, we're not for everybody, but I think that when people come in and work as a project manager for Standard Solar, they're buttoned down. They listen, they're organized, and they really value being on time and under budget. So I think that there's a lot of preparation work. Let's face it, this is a crazy business. It's got so many moving parts, and it moves very quickly. So being organized and doing it right the first time is very important, and that's part of the culture here at Standard Solar. But again, we're owned by a large group that is asking us to deploy low cost of capital to go out and buy projects. So, I mean, we do it right, but we also can offer top dollar for projects.
Sounds good. And so, Anonymous, if you want to clarify, you're welcome to do that in the chat. And I just want to recognize Olu, who's been making some questions and comments. He's joining us from Nigeria and asking about utility scale in Africa. And that this really isn't the venue for that discussion, Olu, but I'm happy to talk to you offline. So just reach out to me. You have my email now that you're registered on the webinar, so we can talk about international. So Harry, I did also want to talk a little bit about the difference between community solar and rooftop or behind the meter solar. These community solar projects in Illinois are 2 megawatt AC. These are 10 to 20 acre solar farms, now mostly using single axis tracker technology. And we saw a shift in the last 24 months from mostly fixed to mostly tracker now. But, a developer could easily sink $50,000 plus into the early stage development of a project before they know what's going to happen with the whole interconnection and the cost of interconnection and necessary upgrades to the grid. Does Standard get involved in that risk taking, that very early front end?
Well, I'll tell you, in Illinois has got, I think, 1.6 gigawatts of community solar projects that basically have gone through the process and are waiting for offtake and for adjustable block program, SRECs. So we went through this process. We went through the lottery. We've got the winners and we've got the non-winners, and the non-winners are waiting for the next step to take place in the process. And so I think that's very important. So going out and securing new sites in Illinois is I don't know if that's the best use of time and money right now, because there's so many projects waiting to go through it. I know there are folks that are out there advancing and doing greenfield work to grow the projects. I mean, I would say let's just to take this the question that you asked me and use it for other states. Yes, very much so. We're doing it and we're supporting our partners in other states where they're marching forward with greenfield development. And we have what we call a co-development process that we do with partners, where we will fund some of the early stage things. Some of the tools that we have to support our partners are that we can shift and front load the milestone payments for a purchase agreement. We can we can include paying the interconnection costs and the decommissioning bonds and some of the other early stage type of costs that are associated with it. And by then replenishing that, the partner can redeploy those funds to go out and pursue additional sites. So in areas where, this is what took place in Illinois 2 years ago, when everybody came through, marching through Illinois and started securing sites and so forth. I mean, that will take place again. And we're here to partner with people when there's a reasonable expectation that we're going to be moving these projects forward. So we are working with some community solar folks in this area, and we're also willing to do similar types of things with folks that are doing rooftop and so forth, paying some of the upfront costs, and then but it's when after we've signed an agreement to work together, but by joining in with us, they get the benefit of both worlds. They get the best price, but they also get some development capital up front. And all we want to do is we want to earn our return, and we want to recover the money that we put into greenfield development and get a return on that. So I mean, that's what our expectations are. So through like a co-development, if I could share another slide that we have, which is kind of the format that we're using for co-development. This is we've established a pre-NTP milestone payment, and in some cases transfer ownership could take place at NTP. So land payments and civil costs are upfront costs associated with greenfield development, and then us reimbursing interconnection and decommissioning bonds can be very helpful for them to redeploy that money to use chasing the next projects. And then having the project close at NTP and a 60% development fee paid, that's front end loaded, and then reimbursement of the other expenses that then allows them to take those funds and then go after new project sites. And that could be for community solar, it could be for rooftops and other types of things as well. But then once we get into construction, we talked about it, then either hiring the company to build the project if they're so inclined and that's what they want to do, having milestone payments there where they're front end loaded, and having us take on the purchasing of the equipment is a huge way to bring development capital back to a developer as they're growing. So I think that those, and then also by working with Standard Solar and us being able to balance sheet a lot of the construction, and those are tiny slivers of costs that other developers are incurring by having to go and get construction financing and equipment financing and so forth. We just do that on our balance sheet, and then we push back that extra margin to the partner so that we can improve their pricing. So that's an example of another way to do so.
Great, that diagram is very helpful. Thank you for that. We have another question from Arnold, and then we're going to wrap up here in just a few minutes. So thank you for everybody who's joined us. I will make just a couple of announcements also at the end. But Arnold says, can you speak a little more to governmental and nonprofit PPA projects? What are the term what term are you looking for? What capital return? I don't know if you'll speak to that, but let's talk about government and nonprofit PPAs, Harry.
Well, it's with a nonprofit, it's all about monetizing the ITC, and something that a nonprofit wouldn't have a tax appetite for. So, in those situations, we're able to, speaking in Illinois, there's, in the ComEd area, there's a structure that you have to have. You have to either use a lease, and you use we own the project and the host will operate the project. And so with that structure, we're able to fully monetize the ITC for the project, and as if the host gets the benefit of that by getting the best PPA that we can. So I think it's really not that different than others, because we take it on ourselves and we manage the tax credit.
And how does the developer fit into that? Are they getting paid a development fee on the front end? Let's say a project goes to contract, it gets to NTP and into construction, and then once you buy the project, the developer's pretty much out of the picture, right? It's between you and the host at that point.
Yeah. They receive their development fee for the project. And then they're often chasing the next project down, and we, it all depends on the business model that everybody's using. I know that a lot of developers, they start off earning development fees to grow their company, then they want to own some of the projects long term, and they take on some of the projects and they sell some. And I think that's a cycle that is taking place out there. We're willing to work with companies in both ways. But our goal is to own the projects long term.
And then we have one question, which I think we can talk about, and then we'll wrap up here. But Anonymous asks, what solar technologies or technological breakthroughs or improvements are you looking at? And I think I know what that is, but you tell us, Harry. You guys are pretty tech forward. What is Standard Solar looking at in terms of near-term technological innovation in solar?
Well, we evaluate it all, and when we feel that it's reached a certain level of sophistication and we trust it, and you got to get CJ, our vice president of engineering, to trust it, then we embrace it. But single axis trackers, we're a big advocate of that, using that versus fixed tilt. We've been evaluating bifacials. We just bought a big block of bifacials, and we're tweaking a lot of our projects to bifacials. We're doing some interesting things that maybe will come to Illinois. In Massachusetts, we're doing a dual use farming. So we farm and we have a solar panel. We use super tall racking system that is spread apart with larger rows, and then crops are grown in between the panels and harvested. And so that's a new thing that's taking place. Massachusetts, they basically have a pushback to using farm fields for solar panels, and so now this is a way to get the best of both worlds out of that. And there's any number of other new technology. I'm not the most techie person within this business. I'm out chasing projects and bringing low cost of capital to our partners. But I'm sure that you could have a conversation with any of our tech people at Standard Solar, and they could tell you all about it.
Yeah, and if any of our listeners are interested in pollinator-friendly solar, that's an innovation that is rapidly evolving. We have a working group on that. Go to seco.com/pollinators. I'm glad you mentioned agrivoltaics, Harry. There's also some, research going on funded by the DOE about that. There's a grant that I'm involved with here at the University of Illinois to study agrivoltaics, and especially in places where farmland is a rarer commodity. Here in the Midwest, we have a plethora of farmland, and it's not so much an issue. I mean, people really don't need to be concerned about paving over the breadbasket. We have so many millions and millions of acres, and solar is such a great use and such a light use on the land. If you take an industrial farm field and turn it into a solar field, in 25 years, it's going to be organic farm ground if you treat it well. And so it's going to actually be worth a lot more money after it's a solar farm than it was before. the hard reality of modern farming here in the Midwest is that farmers are not making a lot of money. And so they are actually welcoming solar developers. They're tripling their income by signing these community solar and utility scale leases. And so that's going to be a phenomenon. But I would have to concur, bifacial trackers and agrivoltaics or pollinator friendly solar are three innovations we are certainly paying attention to. We haven't seen any projects go bifacial yet. And maybe that will be some tracker projects first. I don't know, but anyway, looking forward to getting our first bifacial projects. I know there's a lot of talk in the industry about that. All right. Well, thank you, Harry, so much for being here. I don't know if you want to make any closing comments before I just make a couple of announcements. It looks like I lost Harry. So what I want to do is let people know about the our upcoming events. On January 28th, we have John Carson with Trajectory Energy. John is a community solar developer, and he's now developing the first low-income community solar project up in Rockford. And that is a community solar project that will then feed its power to low-income residents here in Illinois. We have what's called Illinois Solar for All, which is a special carve-out of subsidies for low-income communities. And then on February 25th, my good colleague Ryan Marborough with C2 Energy Capital is going to discuss corporates going solar in the Midwest and beyond. If you've noticed, all the big box stores from IKEA to Target to Walmart are investing in rooftop solar, largely through PPAs, but it's a combination of ownership and third-party ownership. So you can look forward to that. All of our events are available at seco.com/solar webinar. Thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm Tim Montague, your host. Let's grow solar.